All right, fellas, in this video, I want to share with you what I've learned about relationships at 41. Okay. So I just got out of this relationship that I was in for about, it was like right under 3 months, it's a little quick hit. But I've been dealing with this woman for almost a year. And I want to share some things that I experienced throughout this whole relationship dynamic. And maybe it can help you save yourself some time and to avoid some pitfalls and things like that. All right. Now, first off, I will never get on one of these videos and throw somebody under the bus. I'll never speak negatively about somebody. That's just not how I get down. I'm more of going to talk about the lessons that I learned and how to apply those. And hopefully it can help you apply them to your life. All right. So at 41, I've been in a handful, just a few like serious relationships. I've done the situationships, I've been around the block as I've shared in some of my other videos. But this particular relationship was one of my first well, it's not the first one specifically, but it's one of the few relationships where I like to say I am more conscious. I'm more aware. I more know myself a bit better. So throughout this dynamic, man, I had already like noticed some things that were making me kind of uncomfortable. Okay. Even in the earlier stages. And what was cool is the person that I was dating, I was able to have these conversations with her. We were able to sit down, talk about things. She was able to bring things to me. And for the first time, it was one of these relationships where I felt like I could have like cool like conversations about things that I may have struggled with in the past because for whatever reason I may have gotten defensive, or I just wasn't able to sit in these types of uncomfortable conversations. All right. So what I've learned is that relationships, man, they will stretch you. Okay. And I don't mean that in some weird ass way. I mean, they will challenge you in a way. And I've learned that relationships, man, some of the things that you learn in a relationship, you can only learn within a relationship dynamic. You can't learn it when you're single. I'm big into personal development, self-improvement, things like that. I could watch all the videos, read all the books in the world, but some of this shit I'm only going to be able to experience it in a relationship dynamic, like how far I've grown, and how much my ability to connect with a woman has improved or declined. Okay. So in this dynamic, man, what I've learned is that, man, you got to know, the first thing is like you got to know what you're cool with. You have to know like what you're willing to tolerate in a relationship. Because if you don't know this about yourself, man, you'll let a lot of bullshit into your life, and then you'll be questioning like, how did I get here? Can I trust this person? Can I believe what they say, et cetera, et cetera. So it's important to know on the front end, you know, how is this person showing up? Their patterns, their behaviors, how they're carrying themselves. Is this hitting me a certain way? These are things that you got to really kind of know on the front end, but you really won't recognize these things unless you know yourself. And when I look back on my journey, man, in my 20s, even in my late teens, in my 20s, even in my 30s, I didn't know myself well enough to know what I was cool with and what I wasn't cool with. But since I've done some work on myself and I've grown a bit, I've learned like, okay, I'm not cool with certain things. For example, all right, we're gonna go ahead and peel back some layers here. For example, say you're dating a woman and she's like to do the male friend thing, right? Got a bunch of male friends, right? That's stuff that kind of doesn't agree with me. Not to say that you shouldn't be able to have friends. I'm not saying that. Yo, have friends and have your social stuff. But if you still keep people around that maybe you've slept with, for whatever reason, that's something I had to like kind of come to terms with on my own, right? Because I had to look at like my conditioning. I had to look at like, why do certain things bother me? Why do certain things disagree with me? For example, a woman who keeps open access from her past, whatever, lovers, boyfriends, whatever. And this is stuff that I'm already aware of, but this relationship dynamic allowed me to kind of reinforce how I feel about certain things. All right. And it's a fine line to walk too, man. This is what I learned too. It's a fine line because you may have a problem with like, your girl having male friends that she might have slept with. Maybe she likes to go hang out with them and stuff like that. And if that disagrees with you, it's okay if that disagrees with you. Like you don't have to tolerate that, and that doesn't make her a bad person if that's how she chooses to live her life. It just means that it's not in alignment with you. That's where we get the shit fucked up. Like, so my whole dynamic was like, when I was in this, I think at times she felt like I was, suppressing who she was or like trying to change her. And I'm at a place in my life where I ain't trying to change anybody. I'm 41 years old, man. It's not my goal to change anybody. It's my goal to see what brings peace in my life. What um what I allow in my life and what I think is cool and what's in alignment with me. And that's what it's about. It's not about um talking shit about somebody or you're a bad person because you move this way. That's not what it's about. It's important to know what you value and what you're willing to tolerate. Me, I learned this too about myself in this dynamic. I'm more of like a traditionalist to a degree. I have more like traditional values. And I know we in 2026 now. Uh I tend to attract a lot of like spiritual, almost like progressive type women because I consider myself a spiritual dude too. And so I attract a certain energy, a certain vibe. And I'm learning that this vibe that I attract, especially given the journey that I'm on, with my growth and my personal development, I attract a certain energy, but there's some things that come with that energy. Some of these women have a certain openness in their lives and a certain like free flowing type of way of how they move through life, right? So I have to learn like, all right, how much of that can I allow in my life? Or what does that even look like? What does this free flowing shit look like? Because it may ruffle my feathers. And what's interesting about feathers being ruffled is I also had to like self reflect. And I also had to look at it like how much of this type of lifestyle irritating me is from my wounds. It's from my childhood shit. It's from my conditioning. It's from how I was brought up. I've had past relationships where I got done dirty. Chicks have cheated on me. Um, when I wasn't in that place in my life of being able to, I wasn't emotionally mature. I lacked self-awareness. Not saying that, I deserve that type of behavior, but I was in a whole different mental state when I was younger, right? So I ain't making excuses for nobody, but what I'm saying is when that type of shit happens, you can carry those wounds into your new dynamics with new women. All right. Especially if you haven't healed from that past shit. So that's kind of what I was dealing with. There was things that was popping up in my dynamic where I was like, okay, that feel like a red flag, or, my intuition is telling me, yo, watch out for that. Be mindful of that. Okay. But then also, given that I'm on a journey of growth and I'm trying to improve myself, there's a part where you're like, all right, how much of that is my past wounding? And how much of that is my intuition telling me, yo, keep your radar up, you know? So as you become more self-aware and you continue to grow and elevate, it's almost like you'll be challenged in a way, and it's just really important to become more secure in yourself and to know who you are so that when you're meeting women and they may have qualities and characteristics that even in the beginning stages, you might be like, yo, that doesn't agree with me. I can already feel it right now in the early stages. We're on date number 2. And I can already feel that this is not really working for me, but we have a tendency to get blinded. We have a tendency to, when you have that connection, you're getting laid regularly, your dopamine receptors are getting hit, oxytocin. These are all very powerful things that in my 20s and my 30s, I didn't even really know about. I didn't know the impact of like connection like this on a deeper level, how it hits you on a physiological and psychological level. But once you raise your awareness, you can start to see this shit better. Now that doesn't mean that you're not going to fall into traps and that doesn't mean you're not going to get pulled by, the good sex or the strong physical connection you might be having somebody that you may have with somebody. So it's important to be mindful of these things. And it's also important to know that in relationships, you are going to have to bend a little bit. There is some flexibility that you have to have a little bit in relationships because no one's going to be exactly how you want them to be. You're not going to be exactly how a person wants you to be. They're going to have to be flexible and compromise with who you are too. So it's understanding that too, man, that a relationship requires willingness. It requires a willingness It requires effort. It requires intention to keep showing up in that relationship every single day. And in order for you to want to show up every single day consistently, man, you got to make sure that you are emotionally safe in that relationship. There was times in my past dynamic, in this past relationship I was just in, where I didn't feel emotionally safe. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't trust fully. You know, there was things that were popping up that had my radar going up, right? That was my fault. That's where I fucked up, because on the front end of getting to know somebody, I didn't vet properly. Or I'm not even gonna say I didn't vet properly. It's just sometimes you want to give people the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes people have awesome characteristics, and awesome traits, but then also sometimes they have some traits where it's just like, ooh, damn, you an awesome person, but that right there just doesn't agree with me. And that's the part where I had to become okay with. And you should become okay with that. Like it's okay that they're cool. You know what I'm saying? They might cook for you. They might clean up your kitchen and stuff like that for you. They might look out and show you love in ways that make you feel fucking amazing. But they may also have some traits where it's like, ooh, that one doesn't make me feel so amazing. You know, and that's where the skill comes in of being able to have conversations, being able to sit down and talk. And I did that in my past relationship. We had conversations about things that were popping up, but it was like things kept popping up. You know what I'm saying? And I felt that it was getting to a point where I almost was feeling like I was bringing too much insecurity, and I ain't like that feeling. I ain't because I don't feel like I'm an insecure guy. I do feel like there's things that I still have to work on. I'm not a master at this shit. There's still things that I have to improve on. But I like to think that I'm a pretty confident dude. But still, I can slip up too. Still, there might be something that hits me in a way where it's like, damn, that one don't make me feel comfortable, man. I might have to talk to her about that. That's ultimately why I wanted to make this video, man, because relationships, they can be very challenging, man, especially depending on your background and your background with relationships. How have your past relationships been? You know what I'm saying? Did them shits end messy? And relationships can be a beautiful thing. They can really teach you some things, man. They can really show you where you are in your life, how much further you got to go, and all that good shit. And then some of them just, they just might not be a fit. And I think even me, I struggle with this too, where sometimes it may not be a fit and you might be trying to like make it work. You might be like kind of attached to, maybe it's the physicality, maybe it's the physical connection you have. It might be strong. Maybe you have like a spiritual connection with somebody. But ultimately, you got to get to a place where you recognize like, yo, this is bringing me more internal chaos than it is bringing me internal peace. And only you know that. I hope this video provided you with some value. If it did, please smash the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you know when I make more videos just like this. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you check out this video right here on the screen. And I will see y'all in the next video. All right. Peace.